Before we start tonight's program, this is a reminder that this episode will address various topics that we've talked about before related to addiction, amongst other things. And we'll also have a reminder about multiple sclerosis along the way here. These may be sensitive to some of our viewers. Viewer discretion, as always, is advised. We remind you to please consult your doctor, your mental health professional, your outreach group, your sponsor, or specialist before adopting any change to your dietary, physical, and/or mental health regime. If you're looking for options with respect to mental health, contact SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, at 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357. The service is open 24/7, 365 days a year, and is a confidential free information service for individuals and family members facing such stressors. Importantly, if you're feeling suicidal crisis or emotional distress and need to be put in touch with a crisis center, please call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. Or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. You can also text the word HOME to 741-741. Those resources are also available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And then a part of this disclaimer that I don't normally talk about, but because it's going to be part of the story, I'm going to talk about this. If you're looking for options to go with respect to compulsive gambling, please contact either the National Council of Problem Gambling at 1-800-522-4700, or you can go to the National Council on Problem Gambling's website at ncpgambling.org. You can also call 1-800-GAMBLER, especially in the state of Pennsylvania, but also in the state of New Jersey. We remind you to please bet with your head and not over it. And if it becomes a problem, call those numbers as soon as you can. And then lastly, this disclaimer would not be complete without me talking about something that has been part of this life for the last 18 months, but quite frankly, the last 11 years. The National MS Society is a collective of passionate individuals who want to do something about MS now, to move together towards a world free of multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is comprised of unpredictable and often disabling flare-ups of the central nervous system. Such flare-ups disrupt the flow of information within the brain and between the brain and the body. The National MS Society is the largest private funder of MS researchers in the world, investing more than $1 billion to date. MS stops people from moving, but the National MS Society exists to make sure that MS doesn't. To contact the National MS Society, please call 1-800-344-4867. Again, 1-800-344-4867. Or go to their website at nationalmssociety.org. A big reminder, we're still raising money for the National MS Society through A Venture to a Cure. A Venture to a Cure was a fundraising page that was basically constructed in conjunction with the Walk MS 2022 earlier this year. The fundraising page for A Venture to a Cure is at rebrand.ly/A Venture to a Cure. Again, rebrand.ly/A Venture to a Cure. This effort will go on through the end of September 30th, in fact. So if you get a chance, get to rebrand.ly/A Venture to a Cure. Thank you for all of you who have donated money to this amazing organization or have even gone to the National MS Society to learn more about multiple sclerosis and demyelination. It touches me and over to 1 million people in this country who have multiple sclerosis in so many ways. And we appreciate all of you. And on that, let's begin. This past weekend, I did something for the first time in telling this story. I told the story in front of other people in person. And I think the reaction is still gravitating to me at this moment. So much so that we're going to talk about that tonight. And it took one prop, one thing that was in my possession that helped tell a story. This picture of me at 480 pounds. I had that passed around the room, and I had a lot more insight to share with them, as I will tell you about Saturday night tonight, because this is the Venture Forward. Good evening, once again, or good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be, and welcome to the Venture Forward. I am John Venturini, a recovering addict of alcoholism, compulsive gambling, and overeating obesity. And this has been one interesting story, and a story that was told a different way this past weekend, and we're going to talk more about that in just a couple of minutes. But I want to say hello to all of you tonight on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. And Twitter. I can't forget Twitter. You're on Twitter as well. It's been a situation where I was going to talk about codependency tonight, and I realized how important last Saturday's conversation was, so we're just going to do a little bit of shuffling and have basically a free conversation about that, and we'll talk about what's coming up next week. But I want to say hello and see who wins the door prize, and that would be Sammy Superstar over on YouTube, who says, "Hey everyone, hey Sammy, hope you're doing well this evening." We also have Jamie Rose on YouTube, who says, "Hey all, hey Jamie, hope you're having a great evening yourself." We have Brad Kendall on YouTube, who says, "Hey Sammy, hey JV, and hey everyone else. Hey Brad, hope you're doing well." And we have Serenity Studio Art on YouTube, who says, "Good evening, John and all." Well, good evening to you. Hope you're having a wonderful Thursday night. And we also have Awesome Wood Things over on YouTube, otherwise known as co-host Matt Haas of VF Talks on Friday nights at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. Matt, good to see you as always, brother. So, how did this happen? What do you mean, how did this happen? How did we know part of that story, but I think I should be very thankful and give my heartfelt thanks to my dear friend and roommate, Ashley, who works for Gardenzia. And she knows this story. She's been on the show many times before and realizes that my story is a different sort of spin on compulsion and addiction. So she invited me to come down on a Saturday afternoon to tell my story. Ashley, if you're watching, thank you once again for that. Another thanks goes out to April, my girlfriend. She joined me for this talk on Saturday night, or Saturday afternoon. It was Saturday afternoon. It was close to the evening. Saturday afternoon. She wanted to see me talk about this in person, and I did. And it was great to have both April and Ashley by my side as I was telling this story. So the story, we all know what that story is, but I was given some ground rules. It's like the first thing I say to Ashley is, what am I going to talk about? I mean, I have many things going on here. As many of this regular audience and my friends know, there's a lot of going on here. And she said, well, first and foremost, you should be gravitating to the alcoholism and the compulsive gambling. Mainly because not many people talk about compulsive gambling. And I certainly can talk to compulsive gambling, and darn, I did, didn't I? But the alcoholism was definitely a cornerstone as well. There's one interesting thing to all that, though. The interesting thing to that, and as I mentioned to some of you, is it had a massive underpinning of morbid obesity. And I've told you many times before how that is basically the calling card for everything else. I had a series of things I wanted to show. I had some photos of me when I was my biggest. It was an orientation photo back at work. There was a couple of other things. There was language of letting go. We talk about language of letting go all the time in here. I was told, don't bring many props. But I said, you know what? I'm going to bring one with me. I'm bringing this. This is a badge photo that was taken of me back in January of 2019, right around the point I was 480 pounds. I would say, as I explained to the group, that was one of the reasons why I had that sort of realization, if you will, that things had to change. Outside of the fact that I couldn't walk more than 5 or 10 feet without needing to sit down. Outside of the fact that my addiction to food became paramount and grossly overstated than ever before in my life. I told the wonderful group, there was a group of 35 people in that room. Basically, they were gravitating to the fact that, well, eating's one thing. When I explained to them that I was consuming anywhere between 6,000 and 8,000 calories a day, I would go out for dinner, and then, oh, by the way, to take the edge off, I would go to McDonald's or what have you afterwards and go to the drive-thru lane and order just gross amount of food as well. Eating was very much a problem, and it was because there was a lot of things that I kept on throwing in front of me. I had a massive codependency issue, a massive sort of issue where everybody basically gravitated in front of me, and I shuffled a lot of things underneath the rug. I was feeling squelched and shunted. Did I use the word use the word squelched and shunted? No, but I made it very clear that my presence, my opinion was definitely minimal, and that's over time, and that's because I lost love and care and respect for myself. And with someone who's addictive, someone who has compulsion problems, like I do, like many Americans and many people in this world do, we end up going to different devices to go take that out. So for me, first and foremost, it was eating. And then it was drinking. And then it was gambling. But needless to say, to explain this to people who are battling addiction, some are there by their own volition, some are there because they're under court order to be there. This was a story that gravitated to, at least on the surface, until I had this picture. And when I showed them that badge, when I showed them that picture of me at such a poor physical state, a manifestation of just not really doing well with myself, they were shocked. So much so that they wanted to see the picture. They passed it around the room, and it really hit home for some. Some of us can shuffle things underneath the rug. Some of us can hold it in. That in itself is not healthy either. We should address things straight on. We should be clear and honest with ourselves first and foremost. We have to take care of ourselves first and foremost. So that became a very interesting part of it. I start going into the stories. I start going into the fact that it took the realization that I just took a horrendous picture of myself at such a horrible time. And I realized that I needed to do something about it. In fact, it was in a place just like this. That's Raleigh-Durham Airport. That's Terminal 1 at Raleigh-Durham Airport. That is the Southwest Terminal at Raleigh-Durham Airport. Why did I fly Southwest? Well, I was a customer of size. So basically, that was the only airline I could fly where I can get the extra seat refunded to me because I was massively morbidly obese. So it was my airline, but within that terminal, I had the nervous breakdown, especially off the cusp of taking that picture and realizing that my life was really heading downhill. For that and a multitude of other reasons. But I could talk to the picture. I could show the picture. And I did. Some comments. Rollo joins us on YouTube, who says, "Hey JV, hey everyone. Hey Rollo, hope you're doing well this evening." So there's that piece of the story. There was the drinking. Did I go into great detail about how there was a bottle of bourbon next to the coffee maker? Briefly, but I didn't hone in on that. I think more people were just shocked that I was that big, and then I lost that much weight, 300 plus pounds, and able to tell the story. And then I gravitated to 3 different adages during the night's talk. Ended up being about 45 minutes. Things that were very important. First of all, I gave them the groundworks about why this worked. I had to bring everything back in. I had to take care of myself mentally, which means I had to be better with my mind. I had to be better with my feelings. I had to get my feelings out, whether it was a question of journaling or a question of meditation or a question of all that. I explained all of that to them. And for many of these folks, they weren't getting it right away, but then they realized, well, even that minute or two I spend to myself definitely helps. Now, the wonderful people at Gaudenzia, which was where I gave this talk, and let me quickly talk to that real quick. Gaudenzia is an outpatient facility in Westchester, Pennsylvania. A wonderful, wonderful outpatient facility. There are many, many great people there, many great therapists, many great counselors that are there, one of which is my great friend and roommate, Ashley. And these are people that care about the people that walk in through that door. As I explained to Ashley, and she kind of nodded and basically confirmed my thought, for some of these folks, it is on the borderline of a last chance. They have a chance to make themselves better, whether it is they're being asked to do this or they're doing this on their own. This is a chance for them to make things better. And there is a whole slew of different addictions, a whole slew of different things and different reasons why they're there. But to tell the story from the concept of obesity and from alcoholism and from gambling resonated. And mind you, again, the main reason why I was there is to talk about alcoholism and gambling. Definitely covered that. But I would be remiss not to talk about the obesity. In telling the story, I ended up adding different layers to the story as well. As I go back to Maine for a second. There are a lot of different components to this story. A lot of different things that are important. I mean, first of all, I have MS. I explained to them that if I didn't start taking care of what I was dealing with, especially in the midst of, I don't know, a pandemic, I wouldn't be here to tell you this story right now. I wouldn't be here to meet some really incredible people like all of you. I wouldn't be here to basically pass this sort of knowledge and care and love on. So that was important. If I didn't start trying to lose the weight for the third time, if I didn't start really trying to rein this ship in, I don't know if I would have survived, especially with the things that were going on with my demyelination and my multiple sclerosis. I talk about things as far as adages and things that I basically gravitate to. I talk about different parts of the story. Now, you talk about an MS diagnosis, that's one thing. But the other thing I mentioned to them is the fact that I was going through an audit too. I was going through an audit. I was going through a separation and subsequent divorce. I was going through a lot of different things that are going on in my life. And for anyone else, and certainly an old version of me, that would have made me crumble. But I kept it back in and I remained resonant because, as my board says, there is no alternative. I have to march forward with this. And I explained that to them as well. When you're put in this sort of situations where you've hit bottom after bottom after bottom, there truly is no alternative. The alternative is much dire and much more dark. Here, you're working towards something, you're giving yourself a chance. And I kind of go back to the whole idea of therapy. Now, I was challenged on this. I talked about how important therapy was, how the mental health connection is very strong and very important to the physical connection, whether it's a question of the alcoholism, whether it's a question of the gambling, certainly in question of the obesity. And I was challenged on that. It's like, oh, well, I was going to, one person said, and I apologize, I forgot his name, but he said, well, going to a therapist makes me feel like I'm crazy, or I think the term he used was wackadoo. He said wackadoo. He cleaned it up. It wasn't more obscene than that, believe it or not. And I stressed with the gentleman, I needed a place to get all my feelings out. I needed a place to talk about what's going on upstairs. And that doesn't make me any sort of crazy as much as it's just not accounted for. I'm unaccounted. I need to take accounting of what's going on upstairs in order for me to do anything about this. That's why the therapy is very much a fundamental piece of the story, still is to today. They get into the specifics of internal family systems? No. I had 45 minutes. I covered a lot in 45. I wasn't going to go into IFS. But the importance of therapy, the importance of getting that sort of care for yourself taken care of is very important. I then start talking about some of the adages I resonate to. And some of this, well, I think all of this you've heard before. But when I talk about codependency and the lack of love for oneself and not loving oneself, what do I usually say? Well, if the cabin pressure in the airplane goes out and the masks fall, the first person you cover, as you can see in 2 and 3 of this lovely photo to my right hand side, is yourself. Then you can cover anybody else in a row. The love, care, strength, and wisdom has to start inside first and foremost. Without that, what are you going to do? If you don't love yourself or you can't take care of yourself, then there's no possible way that you'll be able to love and take care of others for a longer period of time. It's not sustainable. And then moreover, you're going to crumble. And certainly from example, if you show people that you're going to push everything out and your life becomes that of Dire Straits, well, what does that tell them? It's not really a good message. And it also tells them that, well, you're not really taking care of yourself. Like, I look at it this way. Would I be able to have these conversations if I wasn't taking care of myself? Would I be able to have these conversations if I was not taking this to the most important sort of place in my heart and mind than I am now? And the answer to that is no. I think when we're under that sense of, well, I could take a pass on something, or I'm going to shuffle something off to the side, that's not a good situation to be put in front of. Especially when you're being held back from something very important. I look at it this way. The environment you keep, the people you talk to, the places you go, the things that you keep, they're important parts of your fabric. They're important parts of you. And they have to support you. It doesn't mean that they're going to go out or, they're not going to hold you up entirely. You're going to help yourself too. But they can't be something that is, I guess for lack of better terms, detrimental or antagonistic to what you're trying to do in life. When you push too much down that road, you're going to find that you have no opinion. You're going to find that your opinion doesn't matter, that you keep on getting squelched and shunted. Love using those terms. It's not a good place to be. Nothing good comes out of that. And when you're very weak, like I was, you end up being morbidly obese. You end up having a massive alcohol problem. You have a massive gambling addiction. You end up having a place that you come home to that feels emptier than empty. You start second guessing a lot of the relationships you have. Because again, everything keeps on putting you on the back end. Like, you don't matter. When you look down at it, when you drill down at everything, it wasn't paramount. It wasn't important. And if there was any sort of stipulation or any sort of thought that there was something wrong, it wasn't being addressed. And when you care about someone, you find the most tactical way to do it, but you at least let them know you truly do care about them. That, that you're there for them. More times than not, we can't not have that conversation, especially with the people we care about. I'm very thankful for the people that have come into this life in the last 3 years. And I can say, honest to God, I care about each and every one of you. As I know, deep in my heart, you care about me. To be in a place where I have that, even in the most surreal of times, where we're all in lockdown for a period of time, where we're dealing with a pandemic that was 100 some odd years in the making, to be able to have that sense of community, that sense of connection, is paramount. It's very much an important part of this story. The people that were in that room at Cadenza understand that. They built a very strong connection with each other. They built a very strong connection with the staff and the fellow people in the group. Connection and community helps us through so many things. Just like the airplane mask on the airplane when the cabin pressure goes out. Des joins us from Australia on YouTube, who says, "Good day, everyone." Good day, Des. Hope you're doing well. Another funny thing, far from funny, I think it's somewhat humorous, but very, very paramount and very important, is the fact that off to the left-hand side, as I was giving this talk, I noticed that the 12 steps were up there. And we think about the step work that we do in battling our addictions. We think about that sort of rubric on how to proceed down a life that is a lot cleaner and a lot healthier for us. And it was refreshing to see that. It then let me talk about the importance of serenity. And I can guarantee you each person in that room knows that prayer. And I know a lot of the people in this room know that prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That. We talk about that and we live that. Because if you think about us trying to fix everything in this life, it's not possible. We have to accept the things we cannot change. We cannot change everything. But we need to have the courage to change the things we can. In the sense that, let's bring it back to this. 480 pounds, BMI of nearly 70. I have to have the courage to start working on this and get my weight down and keep it down. To have the courage to not drink anymore after having that massively horrific night of May 30th. After the courage to not gamble anymore after going through an audit in the most perilous of times, of that of a divorce and a pandemic, and going through 1099 forms and realizing, boy, I might have won a little, but I gave a lot of that and then some back. And then all of that, and you wonder why the demyelinating symptoms came back front and center in November of 20. Because my body and my mind finally took accounting of everything else going on. But the thing I dealt with in 2011 with that first demyelinating event that had me knocked out of work for 5 weeks came back for me to take care of that now, because I am ready. I am able to take that on. If I didn't do all of this before then, like I said before, I don't know if I would survive. There are a lot of things in this story that if I didn't put myself in a place where I was working to be better, survival would be a lot more questionable. Matt has a comment that I'm going to bring up on screen. Matt says, I care about you, full stop. I'm also concerned about you because your whack-a-mole skills are so poor. Let me help you fix that. Bah. Yes, you are a whack-a-mole guru and genius, and if you can show me at least one technique that can make me better at whack-a-mole, then I am all for it. And Matt also says Serenity now. Without question, Serenity now. I talk about the importance of just keeping that love and care and wisdom back in, but I also talk about how much codependency was very much a story in that. Whether it was a question of my relationships, or whether it was a question of the people I ran into, a question of my family, what have you. Codependency has been a theme that has been over and over presented. And now I have technique and whatnot to take good care of it, take good accounting of it. But when you don't have that sort of strength, everything gets thrown in front of you and pushes you all out of the way, and you stop taking care of yourself. That's why codependency, as we talked about before on the show, and we'll talk about it again soon enough, is definitely the foundational piece to a lot of the addictions we see. The fact that people are not taking care of themselves. The fact that they're letting themselves go down the road of certain vices and whatnot because their mind isn't there. And if their mind isn't there, guess what? Their body isn't there either. Their health isn't there. En masse. Mentally and physically. So when I start talking about the importance of codependency, and I talk about the books that helped me, obviously what I ended up talking about is Language of Letting Go. So we'd be definitely in need of talking about Language of Letting Go this evening. And let's do that. Language of Letting Go for Thursday, June 16th. Feeling good. As it says in Beyond Codependency, one of Melody Beattie's books, having boundaries doesn't complicate life. Boundaries simplify life. There is a positive aspect to boundary setting. We learn to listen to ourselves and identify what hurt us and what we don't like. But we also learn to identify what feels good. When we are willing to take some risks and begin actively doing so, we will enhance the quality of our life. What do we like? What feels good? What brings us pleasure? Whose company do we enjoy? What helps us to feel good in the morning? What's a real treat in our life? What are the small daily activities that make us feel nurtured and cared for? What appeals to our emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical self? What actually feels good to us? We have deprived ourselves for too long. There is no need to do that anymore. No need whatsoever. If it feels good and the consequences are self-loving and not self-defeating, guess what? Do it. Today, I will do for myself those little things that make life more pleasurable. I will not deny myself healthy treats whatsoever. And that is the language of letting go. To have that in words, to have that in language of letting go is very important. It is a very important lesson for us to realize. We cannot squelch and shunt ourselves. If what we want to do is healthy and we know it's healthy, guess what? Do it. Without question, do it. Some comments. Jamie says, I don't think enough people take good care of themselves. I absolutely agree, Jamie. I absolutely agree. And Rich Vibes joins us from across the pond and says, hey, everyone. Hey, Rich. Hope you're doing well. It is an understatement to say that we're not done talking about codependency. We will keep on talking about codependency as long as there is the venture forward. It is an underpinning to a lot of the things we talk about. We're going to take a very interesting spin on it, though, in the next couple of episodes as we start previewing what's coming up. Tuesday, as we do a Tuesday show once again it's the first Tuesday show in a while. We're going to talk about lessons learned. And what do I mean by lessons learned? There are things that are in my collection of pictures and memories that have become very prominent as far as things I cannot let happen again. Things I cannot basically have replay. Now, some will say, well, you can't live in the past. And no, I'm not saying I'm living in the past and I'm not dwelling upon the past. But I'm looking at that as a learning experience of what happened in the past. Being very well aware of what the past was. And being very, very, very well aware and very well marching towards a place where I'm not going back to that. To be aware and to learn is the most important thing we can do. That's how we grow, without question. So that's the Tuesday episode. Thursday, we're going to take that codependency topic and take it one level further. We've talked about codependency many times, but we haven't talked about attachment. And we haven't talked about the different relationship types of attachment. And it's not to say that attachment is a bad thing. There are some forms of attachment that are actually very helpful, very fruitful, very loving, very caring. So we're going to start talking about that sort of line 1 week from tonight. It is a very important line. And I'll say that the first round of therapy that I did with this journey back in 2019, we talked about that line many times over. So I'll start sharing some of those learnings from that. Some of those learnings will actually show up on Tuesday as well, because there are some things that are very important that came out of those conversations, those therapy conversations at 19. So we'll talk about lessons learned on Tuesday. We'll talk about codependency versus attachment on Thursday. Both episodes, Tuesday and Thursday, will be at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And then tomorrow night and next Friday night, we will do what we normally do on Fridays. Have a conversation about anything and everything on VF Talks with Matt Haas, Paul Burke, and all of you. That's at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. Some final comments. We're just saying hi to Richie Rich. Hey, Richie Rich. I love that nickname. Richie Rich is a great nickname. And Rich says, hey, Jamie. Hey, JV. Hope you are well too, brother. I am. I'm doing the best I can, and it's the best I can possibly ask for. And thank you for saying that, Rich. Muchly appreciated. But until next time, I'm going to say the same thing I say at the end of every Venture Forward in VF Talks. Stay safe, stay sane, stay strong, stay sober. You are worth it. Have a wonderful night. We'll see you tomorrow night for VF Talks at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific, right here on the Venture Forward. Have a wonderful night. I love you all, and fly, be free.